And I remember being in this position where I was contorting and distorting what people were saying, but I wasn't doing it deliberately. I wasn't trying to pervert what they were saying. Just that the belief set that I had perverted everything that came in. I was cocooned. I was insulated by an impenetrable armor of stupidity without realizing it. We believe what we believe helplessly. We don't choose our beliefs, right? Now there are things that we profess to believe that we don't believe, right? There are things that we will profess because, I believe this, and I'm told that if I believe this, this, and this, I also got to believe this, that, and those, right? And next thing you know, you find yourself professing things you don't actually believe because they line up with what you believe, and you're supposed to believe those other things, right? So we sometimes find ourselves embracing or professing to believe things that we don't sincerely. I didn't stop being insane or anything like that. I never was insane when I believed this nonsense. I mean, I used to argue like G-Man. I argued with my high school biology teachers about evolution in class. I was in their faces. I mean, I'm Mr. Greenberg. I was pulling his hair out at times because I would stay after class. I had a spare period in the afternoon. Very often I would hang around, and I remember asking him, why are there still monkeys? And he almost didn't know where to begin, right? Like the depth of my misunderstanding of evolution was so profound, right? Because I had acquired my understanding of evolution largely through just trying to understand the terminology because they're ordinary language words, and through a book. I had a Jehovah's Witness upbringing, and the book on evolution that I read, the first thing I ever read on evolution was a little book called "Did Man Get Here by Evolution or by Creation?" which was like the most widely read anti-evolutionary tract in the world. It translated in more languages than anything else on that subject, and I was convinced that I had arguments that could demolish and completely undermine this theory. And
yeah.
Poor Mr. Greenberg, he was really pulling his hair out. Now, but I came by this delusional belief set very honestly. So I was an active participant in that I was working to maintain and preserve what I believed, right? But I wasn't acting out of false consciousness. I was not lying to myself. I wasn't trying to bamboozle him or anything like that. I really thought he was propagandizing a horrible falsehood to my fellow students, and that I needed to let him know that he wasn't going to convince me, that I couldn't be convinced of this manifest falsehood as I saw it.
Right, and I can hang on a second. I can understand that with evolution, but I'm talking about people with young Earth creationism. Though the amount of evidence you have to disbelieve, I'm sorry, I completely think that's a psychological issue. About evolution, I can understand people do have a lot of misconceptions about it. I get exactly what you're saying, but when we're talking about saying that the man walked with dinosaurs, you have to be on a level of such absolute ignorance. And no offense to you, because I know you were a young Earth creationist, but you have to be ignorant. I mean, there's no other way about it.
No, well, I was ignorant. I mean, I was absolutely ignorant. There's no other way to characterize this. I was completely ignorant. But ignorance is a condition, is a treatable condition, and it's not a sin, right? Where it's bad is when a person actively engages in self-deception, where they have this cognitive dissonance, and I went through that phase. I certainly went through the phase where I was tumbling out of all of this, where I knew I had been lied to. I knew that the people who had been telling me what evolution was were misrepresenting the theory, right? And that's where it started for me with respect to evolution. There were other issues, but for evolution, one of the things was, wait a minute, I no longer trust that my sources on what evolution says are reliable. And once that started, then for the first time I was able to interpret what other people were telling me. And when they said to me, "You're getting it wrong," suddenly, oh, maybe I have been getting it wrong. Right? But that had to crack first. Before that, everything they said would just bounce off of me, right? Like armor. It was incredible. It's very hard. It was so long ago. I mean, I was an adolescent. It's hard for me to cast my mind back. But I have a few acute, embarrassing memories of conversations I had, like the ones with my biology teacher and a few other things. And it is ignorance, but it wasn't just stubbornness. There comes a point where it's stubbornness. Here's the thing that happens. Very often, we encounter people who sincerely believe, and we don't have what it takes to talk them out of it because they have cocooned themselves off, right? They're like, it's like they've built a causeway to an island and then they've set fire to it, and they're unreachable now, right? But then there are people who we know are arguing in bad faith. And I think we have a tendency to be uncharitable and assume that everyone is arguing in bad faith.